Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar, to this second webinar on the EHR Projectathon. So please, you are all muted. So if you could keep your microphone muted at the end for the Q&A, you will be able to unmute. So during the session, if you can please use the chat box or the Q&R. To ask questions to the speakers. They will try to answer during the presentation or after during the Q&A session. This webinar will be recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel, and on the webpage you will find the slides afterward. So I'm Sofia Franconi from IHE-Europe, and I will just drive you through the different speakers and the agenda of today. So I will have a recap of the previous webinar by Andreas Neocleus, who is a project manager at ES National Authority of Cyprus and part of the EHR coordination team. Then we'll have further detail on the Projectathon by Jürgen Brandstatter, who is a senior advisor and GDHP representative for Austria, who's global standard director at IHE Catalyst. Then we will have a presentation from Charles Parisot on the MADO profile. So Charles is a standard and interoperability expert and member also of IHE-Europe. And we will finish with some organizational aspects and the information on the registration by Nicole Vegiotti, who is European Affairs Project Owner at IHE Catalyst. So I leave the floor directly to you, Andreas, and this is the online version of the slide, so everything should be up to date.
Excellent.
Thank you, and good webinar.
Okay, next slide, please. So, okay, the recap from the previous meeting, the webinar positioned the EHR Projectathon as a key instrument for EHDS implementation, and emphasis on moving from the EHDS to the format specifications to tested interoperability. We talked about the Annex 2 highlighted as the reference for essential requirements, general EHR systems, interoperability, security, and logging. And yes, the introduction translates Annex 2 into technical requirements and testable assertions for harmonized EHR components. This is what we talked about last week. Next slide, please. The Projectathon validates content and transactions using EU and IHE specifications. The content will be for the 5 priority categories as described in the regulation. The transactions will be with IHE profiles for infrastructure, security, document, and imaging access. Embedded in the Connectathon will be between 24 and 26 of March 2026. And it is positioned as a practical step to prepare vendors and member states for EHDS conformity and labeling. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's my pleasure now to give you a bit more details on the Projectathon outline and what will be actually offered to test. Next slide, please. So as we already established in the last webinar, we will have a testing of content and we will have a testing of transactions. For the content part, you see on this slide a little bit like a more elaborated slide as last time. So you see, for example, here it has been added the EU base part, because actually when you look on those FHIR implementation guides for the data priority categories, you see that some of those are made in FHIR Release 4 and in FHIR Release 5 in parallel. And they also make use of what we call the EU base or the EU's core, if you like, which is also available, therefore, in Release 4 and the Release 5 version. So the links are updated and point to the right FHIR specifications, which will be the basis for the testing. These are IHE-Europe implementation guides. As mentioned last time, IHE-Europe and IHE-Europe have formed a collaboration here, which we call EHDS. You have the EHDS link here on the slide. We will manage those things more or less together. So next slide, please. A bit more in detail, you have here the exact links again for the different release 4 or release 5 versions. So there is a published version, which are the blue links in the center of this table. If you want to refer to the build versions, then just point, like it's mentioned here in the upper right part, to https build.fire.org, IG, IHE-Europe, and then put in like base or base R4 or laboratory behind it. Then you get to the actual build versions. Giorgio Caglioni has thankfully given and enriched these slides with some updates on where we are right now. So you see the green the green circles means that this is already balloted. And you see here on the right side the completion state of these different implementation guides. So please make yourself familiar on these implementation guides. Next slide. And if you want to test those, we test them in the usual manner as we test content profiles on a Connectathon or Projectathon, which is that it is a no-peer test. So the generic concept is you have a content creator and a content consumer. So for example, if you want to register for the Projectathon, register for this actor. If you create that content, then you need to register as a content creator. And what you have to do on the testing floor itself is that you need to produce those FHIR documents or FHIR structures in case of bundles in case of a prescription dispense, and test them against our validator in Gazelle. And that's basically it. You can also register as a content consumer if you are able to display the content. With display, we mean that you can render those JSONs and display it on your screen. Next slide, please. The other big part of what we offer to test are transactional testing. So we have at the moment, and this might be even more extended, we will offer to test these profiles in terms of like infrastructure, if you want. So we have consistent time, ATNA, and the RESTful extension of ATNA, internet user authentication, which is basically OAuth testing, query for existing data from mobile, QEDM, which is the retrieval of particular data parts out of a FHIR resource. Patient demographics query is, as the name says, querying for patient demographics, but in our case, in form of a FHIR transaction. And mobile access to health documents, MHD, which is the query and retrieve the content from above, which is in our case FHIR documents. So the first 5 we consider like base infrastructure and security profiles. Usually they are quite established in the market and many do know them already. Some of them are also very simple, I would say, like for example, consistent time, which is the base of more or less every working architecture in practice. And the one like MHD, which is really also well known, but that's the one which is explicitly mentioned in XDHR for retrieving this content on the slides before. So in detail, next slide, please. Let's go through all of them case by case. So for example, if you register for consistent time, which we would highly recommend, then this is a very simple profile. So if your system synchronizes time with a time server, and then just register for it. There is one transaction you need ITI1, which you need to perform as a time client, which is basically an NTP time synchronization call. Next slide, please. ATNA and RESTful ATNA is another very base profile. The actor transaction diagram is here on the screen, which explains immediately that we have like two components here. We have like more like client in terms of the audit part of it. We have client applications, which are called here like secure applications or secure nodes, which write audits. So if you are an application writes audits, then you might register as this. If you are an application which receives audits because you are like a central point where audits are stored, then please register for the audit record repository. And if you do any sort of node application, then you anyway need to register for secure application, secure node, and be able to play ITI-19 node application transaction. So it looks complex, but it's rather also not a very complex profile. And there is the RESTful extension of ATNA, which means that you can also now, because there's several ways to record audit logs. There's our options in the ITI-20 transaction. And with the RESTful ATNA extension, there is not only like a new actor added to the system for also searching and retrieving audits, but the main extension of RESTful ATNA is basically that you can also write record as audit records as a file resource into a file server. So that's the big extension of RESTful ATNA, and if you have that in your system, please come and test it. Next slide, please. Internet user authentication. That's also a very basic profile. No, a very important profile. I mean, it's not very basic, but it's a very important profile because it deals with the authentication of users by some standards methods like OAuth. So usually you register as a client system as an authorization client. If you are a server system, then you usually play the role of a resource server. And the authorization server is something which is already there, which gives you the right access tokens. So if you plan or if your implementation includes that profile, then please register for the respective client actor you play. We will offer the testing of it. Next slide, please. Query for existing data from mobile. Just to explain that profile a little bit, you have two actors here, like a data consumer and a data source. So again, if you are a client system wanting to query for some specific data in a data source, then you register as a clinical data consumer. Otherwise, you're the ones who provide these information, like your clinical data source. For example, a FHIR server or an application which implements a FHIR server. And there's also one transaction here, PCC44. If your application has a functionality in it like that, please consider to register for it. And next slide, this is the last and most important profile which we would like to see people testing at the Projectathon, which is the mobile access to health documents, MHD. All the link is, and this is important, all the links are on the slides for you to easily get to these profiles for those who are not familiar with them. Basically, the MHD profile is a profile which profiles the query and the retrieval of FHIR documents from a FHIR server. For that, we have the transaction site TI65 for providing the document bundle, and 66 for finding document lists, 67 for finding document references, and 68 for actually retrieving those documents. There are also supporting transactions like 105 and 106, but those 4 I mentioned are like the more important, which makes the core of that profile. If you are a client who wants to send content to somewhere, then you identify as a document source. If you are a client who wants to query and receive content, then you are a document consumer. And the recipient or the responder is usually the server system. So, for example, if you are a software holding data, providing data for others, and have implemented a FHIR server, for example, then you usually are the recipient to the document source and the responder to any sort of document consumer. So next slide. Lastly, and this is just an overview slide, we will also have profiles for imaging, but I will not go into this. We have Charles Barisot right following me for going in detail in this topic. Foremost, we have MADO and IHE-Vado here, as those are the profiles, as especially MADO, which have been developed during the EHDS project and which are definitely part of the EHDS specifications. VIA is on this list. We will still decide if we offer it. VIA is simply a very well-known and a profile for accessing web page images. It's still under discussion if we will keep it on the list, but MADO and IHE-Vado will be there for sure. And I think that's exactly my keyword to move over to Charles for going to this next block of the agenda, which deals exactly with these imaging topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jürgen. So let's take a dive here. This is Charles Barisot, and the dive we want to take is into the imaging access part. So you've heard about the various tracks that pertain to specific reports, such as lab and even imaging. And here we're going to be focusing on the imaging access. So focusing on the imaging access means that we are going to not address the FHIR imaging report implementation guide. That's going to be done with the other document. But the part we're going to focus on is the one which is shown by this green line. It includes the red pieces, which is the draft MADU profile. You need to know that the draft MADU profile is made of a Word document, the big chunk, which is on the EHDS website, and is referencing 2IG, one which is a FHIR imaging manifest implementation guide, and the second one which is a FHIR manifest envelope implementation guide. The envelope is to be used if you move the manifest through MHD. That envelope is used for both form of the manifest. You see that in the chapter of MADU, you have chapter 6X1, the DICOM COS, Imaging Study Manifest, so based on DICOM. And you have also this reference to the FHIR-based Imaging Study Manifest. We'll discuss the fact that we have 2 formats that can be used for the imaging manifest a little bit later. We have the EHDS profile, which is shown in this orange part here. That is a cross-community profile that has been issued by IHE for trial implementation middle of this year. And it contains a transaction WEDU-RS that is specialized for cross-community traffic that is moving through gateways between communities. Anyway, let's dive into the way we're going to be testing implementation of the MADU profile and of the EHDS WEDU profile. We have two imaging study manifest format, as I discussed. One which is based on the DICOM-COS. For those who are familiar, this is an extension of the DICOM-COS which is used in XDSI. And we have a new format based on a FHIR specification for an imaging study manifest. Those are defined in MADU such that you can map one onto the other and vice versa without any loss. That's one of our design goals, to minimize complexity when you have to move from one to the other. We have the two actors involving the MADU profile, the imaging document consumer actor, and the imaging source actor. The image source is where the images are in an imaging repository, and the transaction between the imaging document consumer in MADU is the RAD-1XY transaction, which is a WEDU-RS based on the same DICOM standard. And if you think of the EHDS WEDU profile, it has the same actors, imaging document consumer and imaging source, but it's using the RAD-160 transaction. So pay attention in the Projectathon, because in some cases we will need to use the RAD-1X transaction, in other cases the RAD-160 transaction, but both are WEDU-RS based. As we said, built on the XDSI DICOM-COS manifest for the DICOM-COS of MADU. We have a FHIR formatted manifest. We're using WEDU-RS and subset of WEDU-RS to retrieve DICOM instances in both profile. And the way this profile has been designed with a clear target to support accessing images within complex structures such as a region, such as a nation, and as well with the combined use of MADU and EHDS WEDU to do cross-community or cross-country type or cross-region type exchanges. So the multi-community concept is designed even in MADU so that you can not only deploy MADU within your country, but connect it to another country using EHDS WEDU as it will be required in the European MyThat.EU type deployment. So you notice that there is no way to exchange the manifest or to access the manifest. This is out of the MADU profile. But this profile is designed so that it can be combined with any document sharing. So if you want to share the imaging manifest documents, you are free to combine MADU with XDS if you want to share them with XDS. If you want to share them with MHD, you can also combine MADU with MHD. And if you have an alternative document sharing scheme, you can also combine the MADU profile with that scheme. It is designed to be flexible and independent of the way you manage the sharing of documents. So therefore, we can look at it from different angles. We can say, hey, it's in a sense a next generation XDSI profile, because if you do MADU plus XDS, it's like XDSI version 2, and what you gain is a richer manifest. But it's also a profile which which can be combined with document sharing with MHD, where before XDSI was limited to XDS. So that opens the document sharing to the document sharing infrastructure based on the document reference resource. And that's one of his design characteristics, is to, especially in the multi-community environment or multi-region environment, to ease the security and the privacy deployment when you have different community with different policies that have to be bridged, and having gateways between those communities is unfortunately the best way to do that. You see the reference on top, which is this blue, the blue line. This is pointing you to the EHDS website, where you will find the specification of the MADU profile. We have included here another link to the MADU profile, but which is not on the EHDS website, but which is directly on the IHE website. Same document. It is important that we remind ourselves that the MADU profile today is indeed in public comment. But when you read it, you will see that it is a public comment that looks very, very complete, very mature, high quality in terms of specification rigor. However, we will have feedback, and you will be part of that feedback if you implement and review that specification and provide comments. So there will be little things to fix, and we expect the fixes to happen after January 10. So at that time, the resolution of the fixes, and we expect to have in early February a trial implementation version to be available. Let's say mid-February, something like that. But we are confident that you can start working on the public comment version. There may be a few small differences, but they should not be complex nor force you to redo a fair amount of work. The sharing of document is outside of the specification, and therefore when we go to the Projectathon, we will use an XDS or an MHD infrastructure. So we ask you to support at least one of those, so that you can gain access to manifest if you consume them, or you can deposit or publish your manifest if you are a manifest creator or a document or an imaging document source. That's a little bit of a constraint, but we think this is a reasonable constraint because those XDS and MHD profiles have been around for many, many years, and giving you the choice should give enough flexibility. We will account for the fact that the MADU profile can also be grouped with the IHE-WADU profile to do cross-community, a profile that is quite stable. But we are using the mechanism, the grouping mechanism, to actually bring on the Projectathon show floor, both test floor, both profile. We will do Projectathon level testing, a little bit of a specific way in that we are going to try to do it on a near Connectathon rigorous mode. We will have test plan. We will use Gazelle. We will also have test tools as much as possible, and we have time to update them or develop them. You can participate at the same time in having a system in the Connectathon and in the EHR Projectathon to do the MADU IHE-WADU Projectathon testing. We will be on the same show floor, so you will be moving from one to the other as easily as you move between two Connectathon participants. So simultaneous participation is fine, and you will see that from a price of engagement, this is actually an advantage to be a Connectathon participants. One point, which is a little bit specific to the imaging world, having imaging study that are nice to look at, but that are anonymized, that have all of the necessary transformation that have been done so that they are not revealing any specific patient identity, but they are from patient, but they have consented to the sharing of those studies. So we ask you to bring your own test data. So if you are a source of imaging data, please bring your own test data and the ability to produce the manifest that correspond to those imaging studies. That way, if every source bring 2 or 3 imaging study as test data, we will have 5, 10, 20 imaging study to play with and be able to leverage to interact between the participant system. Remember that it is important that we are doing both Projectathon testing, but we're also doing Projectathon showcase, demonstration, education. We want the community at large to learn about those profiles, understand what they do, and see them in action. You will see that we have planned to have education session for what we call non-testing participant that can be part of the Projectathon, but that are here to be educated through a session that will be organized in another room that are not going to distract the testers. But there will be also public that is going to appreciate seeing how things work and how mature what we are showing is. So what can we do and how can you participate? That's the main topic here. We have here in an orange block, but you can abstract as your own system, and your own system can play a number of actors. So you register to the Projectathon just like you register to a Connectathon. You have the actor is in that case the MADU imaging document consumer, and you see that this is the MADU imaging consumer that is consuming the MADU cost-based manifest. This manifest is actually coming from this gray corresponding system, which is the imaging document imaging source, but it will be a testing environment that is going to be provided by the Projectathon organizer. So that it has a test imaging study. There is one test sample there, a manifest created on that study, and that manifest being in the EHDS or MHD infrastructure. From your system, you can query through an EHDS or an MHD query and a retrieve of document, get that manifest. So the yellow manifest here is actually the gray one you have on the right. You will consume this manifest and provide to a user of your system. So you need a user interface to see what is this study. What are the anatomical region covered by that study? What are the modalities covered in that study, and then to see the detail, move down at the series level and to see what are the series, potentially different modality, a PET series, a CT series, and moving down to the instances to say, oh, okay, that series has 2,000 images. Wow, okay, that's a big one. It may take a little bit of a while to get, but that one is of another description and maybe of more interest. So we want to get a sense of what the richer manifest actually delivers to the users so that this imaging document consumer actor can initiate a WADU-RS RAD 1XY transaction to the imaging source, which will return what is requested, either a single image, a series of image, potentially the entire imaging study. So that's kind of the environment for this first way to participate by being a MADU imaging document consumer consuming DICOM cost-based manifest. The second choice is now being able to be a source so that you can interact with others that are MADU imaging document consumer, as we discussed before. Having those two types of implementation interacting mean that the imaging document source needs to have being preloaded with some imaging study, and we discussed that those samples need to be anonymized and have all of the rights to be shared and not infringe on any patient privacy. And those will be represented by a MADU DICOM cost manifest that's going to be shared and consumed by one of the imaging document consumer that knows how to digest DICOM cost-based manifests. The specification asks you to create the Firebase version of the manifest, but at that point, the 2A system will not be asked and will not be tested and asked to interact with the Firebase manifest. So you may support it, you may not support it, but for the Projectathon, we need to organize the testing and compartmentalize things. So 2 choices, a few more choices. Now we are moving into a multiple community. And you see that we have starting from the right side, the MADU imaging document source, which is exactly the same one as you had before. So if you participate as 2A and interact with the number of 1 actors, you can also be a 2A and be queried by imaging document consumers that are in other community. However, the imaging document consumers need to be EHDS capable in addition to MADU capable. That means supporting the EHDS, the URL that allows you to do the RAD 160 formatted URL in WADU. So having done this, you see that the transaction will go through a 2B actor, which is the WADU imaging gateway. If you bring the 2C and the 2B, then we will be interacting with a number of 2As. You may participate as being only a 2B, that's perfectly fine as well, and you will be interacting with some other participants that are 2C and some other participants that are 2A, that are going to feed you request or respond to the request you forwarded. Now we can move to a little more complex and a special case, which is actually not today in EHR. That is something that is being discussed in the context of MILT at EU, which is a variant of the previous implementation of EHDS, which is the WADU transaction can have an imaging source that sends a redirect so that the imaging document consumer reissue its WADU RS retrieve, and the imaging source return the responses bypassing the imaging gateways. So that's kind of a way to not overload the imaging gateways with the flow of imaging data, which in large-scale national network can be national or cross-border network can be a little bit more heavy to support. You don't need to focus on this. You see that there are specific actors, the 2C with a direct capability and the 2A with a direct capability. This is something that we have one country that has volunteered to be there and demonstrate this. So we already have those 2 systems that we need to demonstrate that potential extension, but that's going to be one of the subject of discussion and of learning. Let's go back to the mainstream of EHR. We can also work with the imaging study manifest in Firebase format. In that case, the same 2A actor, but the 2A actor that support a Firebase imaging study manifest, this blue manifest, which is stored and retrieved in that test environment of document sharing. The FAR manifest is consumed by the imaging document consumer, just like the cost was one. You know, it has similar information inside, so the user can see a similar experience as you were seeing into the actor number 1. the transaction are very much the same as we had between 1 and 2A. If you want to take a further step, you can actually bring now the fire imaging manifest into a cross-border environment. And this is what would happen. You see that we have not changed much between the 3B compared to what we had before. The 3A was doing the RAD1XY transaction, and the 3B does the RAD160 transaction of XC-WADU in order to be able to be relayed through the gateways. And the 2A does not change, except that it is able to provide images that the images from the imaging study that was referenced by this blue imaging study manifest. Last is we can have a little bit of a sandbox where folks bring a mapping tool that they have between the Firebase manifest and the DICOM cost-based manifest, and we experienced a mapping tool, and we should be able to chain mapping from one sample through a tool, through a second sample, going through another tool to recreate and then compare the two samples, and we should find no difference in terms of content. So you are probably a little bit concerned, but here is a summary. So there are the first set that we presented, the yellow one, that are essentially leveraging the DICOM cost manifest to do their exchange. That's where we're expecting to have a good level of participation, because people that have done a cost manifest for XDSI can probably more easily extend it with the MADU manifest. We have the special case of the redirect and the bypass of the gateway, and then we have the 3A, 3B, 3C that is essentially the peer of the 1, 2B, 2C that we had on the cost manifest. We have it on the fire manifest for those who want to focus on fire manifest testing. If you support both, don't feel afraid. You can actually register for number 1 and number 3, or number 2B and number 2C and 3B. You can perfectly be dual manifest capable, and we will welcome you to do that. If you have been a little lost in what I explained and you need further discussion and explanation, don't feel free to use my email address and send me those questions. We will organize our work going forward by organizing as soon as January 16. If you have registered before January 15, you will be invited to that January 16 get together with the early participants. We close registration only at the end of February, but for those who register early, you will have the benefit of starting the work sooner and influence and better understand the way the details of the Projectathon setup, the way it's going to be configured, and have any question that you have answered, so that we allow you to move as quickly as possible and make this participation as easy as possible. The testing will happen with a setup afternoon of Monday. That may be quick, so come a little bit later in the afternoon. And then we'll start the testing first thing Tuesday morning until mid-afternoon, until noon on Thursday, the 26th, and then we'll have the closing ceremony and your certificate, if you have won one, for the quality of your testing, distributed on that early afternoon. And you'll be able to go home on the rest of the afternoon. In parallel, we will have on Tuesday, and maybe in other days, depending on the number of registrants, some training session that show you what the XT-EHR specification are in the area of imaging access, as well as an overview of the MADU profile and an overview of the XC-WADU profile. Each session will be around an hour, a little bit less, a little bit more, depending on the complexity of the topic. Thank you very much. This concludes my presentation, and we will take questions later. Thank you.
So the EHR Projectathon 2026 will take place in the IHE-Europe Connectathon week on the Connectathon floor from Tuesday 24th March to Thursday 26th of March 2026, with a very dynamic schedule that alternates educational and testing session, and we will see it in the next slide. Just to remember you that Monday afternoon will be dedicated to connectivity and preparatory tests in Gazelle. The place is the Egg in Brussels, that is about 15 minutes walk from Gare du Midi. Next slide, please. So this is the very draft agenda of the EHR Projectathon 2026. I remember you that it will take place on the Connectathon floor of the IHE-Europe Connectathon week. As I said previously, on Monday afternoon, we will have connectivity and preparatory testing Gazelle on the testing floor. On Tuesday morning, we will have parallel session between testing and the open ceremony plus educational session, and it's the same on Tuesday afternoon. On Wednesday morning, we will have only testing session. On Wednesday afternoon, we will have parallel session on testing and educational sessions. And on Thursday, we will have the end of the testing on the morning, and on the afternoon, start at 2 o'clock, we will have the closing ceremony. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. So, just to remember you, the registration starts today. This is the fee schema. Vendors that are already registered in the Connectathon floor have a fee of 0 per system, but 450 euros per additional participants. Vendors and or organizations that are not registered in the Connectathon floor will have to pay 790 euros per system that they will register and 450 euros per participant. I will send you a message in the chat with the registration link, and I've prepared an email for you if you have any question or doubt. Just to remember you, we will close the registration at the end of February. We will have a next webinar on the 16th of January from 11 to 12. So same time slot as today with a detailed agenda, more detailed agenda, and use cases and test cases that there will be in the EHR Projectathon. And as Charles already said, we will have another webinar right after at 1 p.m. with MADU and WADU. So stay tuned with the next webinars.
I don't know if you have any questions. I've looked a bit at the chat, and most of the remarks were on the sound. Really sorry for that again. But if you have some questions, we still have 5 minutes to ask them. Please feel free to unmute and to ask directly. If there are no questions, I guess that's... Oh, there is one from Nick. Sorry, please go on, Nick.
I have a question regarding the testing of the MADO and XC-WADO spec, because MHD and XDS are also involved. Are those profiles also being tested, or can a minimal implementation also be used during those testing sessions, specifically for MHD and XC-WADO?
Yeah, the intent is not to test those profiles. You need to have enough of a working implementation so that you can query for manifest and pick a manifest with different patient name based on different sources. So that is, you still need to do a little bit of a query and a little bit and retrieve is straightforward.
Thank you.
So thank you for the participation and the question. I propose that we will send an email address with the recording. So once you have the full presentation from Charles, probably you will have more questions, and you will be able to ask them directly in an email that Charles will be able to answer. So if there is not more question, I thank you again. All for the connection problem, and we will reach out with the recording as soon as possible. Thank you very much to all of you, and hope to see you in January.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, and Happy New Year. Bye.
Thank you.
See you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.